Hey everybody, welcome back to Thinking Out Loud, Complex Mind, Simple Man. This is Theus talking to you again, and we're just going to continue on our discussion about basic finances, right? We've already gone through transactional accounts where I talked to you about setting up your checking and your savings, different little strategies or pro tips that I think would be very useful that you can employ depending upon what your individual needs are, and just kind of how to navigate getting that in a place that works for you. Now, moving into the next section, what you see here is it says life insurance, but I'm actually going to expand this. When I drew this up, this was just looking at your household finances from the standpoint of managing cash flow and your assets, and more of like the traditional side of the spectrum. And I completely overlooked how important it is to really factor in some of these other areas, because people aren't that familiar with insurance. You know, I've been in the industry for 20 years now. So there are some things that I just take as a given and overlook how unfamiliar many people are with the industry. So I'm going to do a couple of videos, and it's going to work through a couple of angles or things to get familiar with. But today's video is really just an introduction to insurance. I want to kind of lay a foundation so that we can all be operating more comfortably with all these different things that impact our lives each and every day. I mean, we're paying for premiums on everything you see on the screen here, and yet how many people really understand how they work and what they mean? Now, this video is not going to walk you through the ins and outs of each of these, but I will be doing that. So what I want to touch on first is just what are these terms that we hear thrown around so often? There's property insurance, or also known property and casualty. So property and casualty is your homeowner's insurance, it's your renter's insurance. If you own a condo, then it'd be your condo insurance, and your personal automobile insurance. Yes, there are more than this. You can move into the commercial side where we have different policy types, but generally these are your core pieces of property and casualty. So let's break that word apart, those terms apart. Property is exactly what it says. It's a tangible asset, and then casualty is losses surrounding that asset. So losses to that asset or losses on or about that asset. Then you have life, accident, and sickness, also known as health insurance. These are the two insurances that I would say are most important out of all of these, but each of these is extremely important. But they all operate differently. That's why they all have different names, right? But they all have some basic foundational pieces that they share, okay? Because they are all various forms of insurance. That's what I want to talk you through real quick right here. So let's build that quick understanding. Risk. You may have heard the term. I hope you've heard the term. If you haven't heard the term, you're going to hear that term right now. So the risk is the foundation of all insurance policies. It's all about identifying the risk, measuring the risk, and then assigning the risk. And assigning the risk just means who is going to take on the brunt of the responsibility for the value of this thing that we say is at risk. And that thing might be your life, it may be your health, It may be something you own. Then you have, what is a loss? Well, a loss is based off it having a value. So first, there must be a value that has been lost in order to seek indemnification. Okay, I want to touch on that in a second. So that value can be monetary, it can be physical, mental, emotional, reputational. That's a big one, right? Slander, libel. You may have heard those terms thrown about recently, especially with our political situation we have going on. So these are very real things that can cause financial loss to an individual or their household or their business or whatever the controlling interest is. So the type of insurance at play, that will determine how, or the terms of how that value is restored. So indemnity, sometimes I trip over that word, it seeks to restore that value. Or a better way of saying it is trying to make you whole. So making you whole means you were at 100 and then you dropped to 80. So how do we get you as close back to 100 as possible? We are not here to try to make you go from 100 to 80 to 120. See, that would be you profiting. Insurance is not intended to create a profit to the claimant. Claimant, think of the term claim. You make a claim against your policy, you are considered a claimant. All right. So if you are getting more back than you lost, that is most likely going to come in some form of potential fraud, right? Because they're going to be looking at the law of large numbers, folks, okay, to determine the value of whatever risk and loss has occurred. Okay, so when you have an accident in your Nissan Altima, they're not just looking at your Nissan Altima, they're looking at the thousands of accidents with Nissan Altimas and trying to line up the different factors of how those accidents occurred, how bad they were, what were the losses and all these different things. And then they can use that to make an informed decision on what happened in your specific accident. Okay, so your specific accident matters, but the law of large numbers is saying, well, let's reach out here and try to make as informed a decision as possible so that we are making a person whole. We're not making them short, right? We're not taking value from them, and we're not giving them too much. Okay, but it also goes on the other side, right? So this is where your premiums come into play, where if you had a loss, I'm going to use the Altima again, and the damage to your car is $10,000, you may have a hard time finding $10,000 to fix your car. What the law of large numbers does is it now moves into a cost sharing aspect, and this is how they help determine your premiums, because they're going to look at that and they're going to say, okay, we're going to pull all these different policies, we're going to cover all these different cars and all these different circumstances, so everybody's paying in this premium, but we don't anticipate, based off our research, having a lot of losses at any one time, so that those premiums will be adequate to pay all 10,000 of your damages, even though you yourself have only paid us maybe $1,000. So law of large numbers works on both sides of the claim, right? It's before there's a loss, it's trying to determine how much should you be paying in. After a loss, it's trying to figure out how much did you actually lose, right? So a couple things, very foundational. They apply to all the different branches of insurance. So it's definitely something you want to be comfortable and a little familiar with. Now, 4 big things: premiums, deductibles, co-pays, and coverages. All right, so your premium, as I kind of alluded to a moment ago, this is your portion of the cost of insuring your interest. Okay, you have to first have an interest in the thing that you're talking about insuring. You can't insure someone else's brother, but you can insure your brother if you provide adequate amount of financial care for said brother. Okay? Or you can't insure your neighbor's wife, but you can insure your wife because you have a financial interest in her, and she has a financial interest in you, so she can do insurance on you, but she can't do it on another neighbor, right? So this is how we make sure that what we're insuring is not just being used as a profit motive. You have to be in a position where you might lose value if something happened to the person and or thing involved in the loss. Okay? Deductibles, easiest way I can kind of put this is self-insurance. When you're structuring your policy, they're going to ask you what deductible you want, because your deductible will help do a couple of things. One, it's going to affect your premium. The higher your deductible, the lower your premium, and vice versa. But that's not the part I would really think that you should focus on. The real important part here is the deductible is how much you are willing to take on before you even have to bother the insurance company. Okay? So if you have the money set aside to where you could take care of any damages that are less than $1,000, then your deductible will probably be about $1,000, because you wouldn't even make a claim. If it was $700 worth of damage, you just go pay and get it fixed. Doesn't affect, that way it doesn't mess with your premiums, doesn't mess with anything. You just paid for it and kept going. But if it was a more serious accident or injury, you need help, right? You're back at that $10,000 example. Well, your deductible is saying, okay, well, I still am going to pay the first $1,000. And then after that, the insurance company's policy kicks in and the terms of the policy take over from there. Copays, this is something you typically will see in health insurance. You don't often see this in other policies, but once you've taken care of your deductible, your self-insurance amount, then your copay may kick in. And your copay says, all right, we're still going to allow you to use other people's money to help take care of you, but this could cost a lot and it could take a while. So you're going to have to share in the expenses as we go forward. So if you have an 80-20 policy, which is pretty common, that means after you've taken care of your deductible, then the insurance company will pay 80% for your care and you will pay the other 20% for your care. What I didn't mention here, and I may mention in a future video, is there's oftentimes an out-of-pocket maximum when these things are happening, so that you're not constantly having to pay in the event of a catastrophic loss. And those are typically things like cancer or a terminal diagnosis or a very serious chronic illness where you're having to pay a lot of money. Well, an out-of-pocket maximum will say, well, in this year, you won't cross past this point. So after you've taken care of your deductible and you've paid this amount of copays, we're going to go to a 100-0. So now the insurance company pays it all. You don't pay anything else for the rest of the year. Last year was our first year doing the Stock to Clinic program, where we gather funds and we make a donation to a local school with for things like underclothes and certain supplies that the clinic may need that's not included in their budget, because accidents happen and children need support. And these are the things that oftentimes we don't think about. So if you looking at your screen, you will see what we did last year compared to what we did this year. We just wrapped up this campaign, folks, and just look at how much more we were able to do. We did a great job last year, even better this year. Looking forward to next year. Best way for you to join in to help us with this and hopefully be able to move into supporting 2 or more schools, right, would be to join us on our Patreon page or join me on my Patreon page. But we're all there as a growing community. And if you pay attention to the end of the video that you're watching, you'll see the instructions on how to do exactly that. Thank you so much. I look forward to you joining in wherever it is that you feel best to join in. And let's do some good things for our kids and even broader
for our community at large. Thank you.
So then we're going to talk about coverages. And the way I would kind of lead into this one, I'm sure everybody's pretty comfortable with what they are, right? The different things your policy pays for. But the analogy I like to use is like going to a restaurant and ordering from a menu. So the insurance company, or also known as insurer, is the one who's the restaurant in this scenario. They decide what they're going to offer. They have decided this before you ever came there, right? They didn't come to you and say, hey, tell us what to sell you. No, they're going to tell you what they're going to offer, and then you're going to choose from what's available. And then it's up to you how to put that together. Will you do just a main course, or would you like to add an appetizer? Would you like to have multiple sides? Would you like to have one side? What sides would you like those to be? You may even get to choose portion sizes. So there's a lot of things that you get to do with the menu that's already been laid out for you. So that's how your policies are structured. They've already laid this out. You are now going to choose from it, and then you will pay premium for, or, like you're paying your bill. You're paying the premium for the coverages that you selected. And it's really about that simple. Yeah, really, it's about that simple. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring all this together for you. All right, so here's a quick scenario. I'm going to read it out loud. All right, so customer talking to the insurer. Hey, I have this thing, and I feel it's valuable, and losing it would cause me harm in some way. If something happened to it, I will need to replace it or its value somehow. Insurer. Well, how much is this thing worth relative to other things that I insure, and how well have you even taken care of this thing? How attached are you to this thing? How are you even attached to this thing? And how likely is this thing to become damaged or lost? You as the customer, you're going to answer all those questions. If the insurer is satisfied, it'll continue. Okay, based on your answers and the research we've completed, we're willing to pay you up to $50,000 if this thing is stolen or broken. But if it's damaged and can be repaired for less than $1,000, you need to handle that yourself. Our research shows a loss is unlikely, or at least it'll be infrequent enough to take over this risk for you. Now, you pay us $500 each month for however long you own this, and you have yourself a deal. Customer. But what if it's stolen? Or if it's lost 2 months from now? What if it's never stolen or lost at all? Insurer. Well, the first answer to that is, well, that's the risk we take. There's a chance that you would have only paid us $1,000 at the time that this thing is lost, and we'd have to pay you $50,000. That would suck for us, but that's our risk. Now, the second one, that's the risk you take. It's not our problem if you never have a loss. We will always stand ready to pay that $50,000. We have to be based on the contractual agreement we made with you. As long as you're making the payments of your premium, we will make good on paying that out. What we're doing here is we're just simply exchanging risks and values. We both risk paying more than we ultimately receive. And that, folks, is an introduction to insurance. As we walk through life insurance, health insurance, property and casualty insurance, keep these things in mind because it'll inform the discussions that we'll have as we go forward. Because this underpins all of it. So, thank you so much for hanging in there with me. I hope this was engaging and informative for you. Please make sure that you do go check out the site at complexsimpleman.com. And we definitely would appreciate, I would sincerely appreciate, if you also would consider becoming a Patreon sustainer. When you participate with Patreon, you're not just helping to support me. Most of the money that I receive through Patreon goes directly to our Stock the Clinic campaign that we do each year. We just wrapped up 2022 at the beginning of this school year, and we are already working towards 2023. I think we can do even more than we did last year. And as that grows, then hopefully we can expand into other things that I have in mind. But for right now, it's Stock the Clinic, it's taking care of our kids in the school, and I would really appreciate your support. Thank you again for watching this video. Please leave any comments that you may have. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll talk next time. Goodbye for now.